This lecture is the second part in our discussion of rhetoric. So if you've missed the lecture on rhetoric, please go back and watch that so this will make a little bit more sense. But in this lecture, I'd like to introduce you to Burke. That would be Kenneth Burke, who offers for us what I call ideas for living. Not really, it's like to call it that. I happen to really like the work of Kenneth Burke. My master's thesis used theories of Kenneth Burke. I before have presented to the Burke Society. So anyway, but this is a rhetorical theory, rhetoric, here we go, right, that can be used for analysis. And it's something that we're going to study in this class to understand how advertising works, rhetorically speaking. And also it's a theory that you might find very useful for you. You probably will, in fact, find very useful for you when doing your commercial analysis in this class. So one of the things Burke offers us is the definition of man. When he says man, he means all humans. That's why I put that little sick there. Sick means error original in text. So Burke says the definition of man, he's referring to really all humans. And in his definition of man, he says that man is, first, the symbol using animal. And by that he says we're symbol making, symbol misusing animal, right? So we're the symbol using animal, which is to say we tell stories, right? And it's really important that other animals do in fact communicate with each other. One of the most fascinating, I think, are bees, or I guess honeybees, that can then do a sort of a dance to tell other bees where they have been, that they can find where the honey is, right? So they can give information to each other. So those are animals who are communicating, but they're not communicating really using symbols, and that they're not telling stories. I want to offer to you an example from Burke. So Burke says that one day he was looking at his office window and he saw a nest of wrens, right? They're birds, right? And there was the mommy wren and the daddy wren, and they had eggs, and the eggs hatched, all the little baby wrens, and one by one the baby wrens did what they're supposed to do. They climbed up on the edge of the nest, and they hopped off, and they flew away, except for this one last wren wouldn't do it. So finally, one day, Daddy Wren came along with a piece of food, and Baby Wren went for it, reached for it. Well, Daddy Wren moved further away, so Baby Wren moved closer, and Daddy Wren moved further away, and Baby Wren moved closer. This went on until Daddy Wren was standing up on the edge of the nest, holding the food out over the edge, and Baby Wren's also perched on the edge, reaching for the food. And at that moment, Daddy Wren drops the food, and with his beak grabs the lower mandible of Baby Wren and wrenches the kid out of the nest, thus successfully de-birding the nest. What's unusual here, or what about humans, is that we can tell that story, right? Because Mama Wren isn't going to go and play bridge with her friends later and say, "Oh, it was awful. We could not get Junior to leave. Finally, Harold just had to hold that food out there," right? I mean, this is not, or Daddy Wren, by the way, this is like the worst like stereotypes of, male, female, middle class, right? Daddy Wren is there on the golf course saying, "Ah, the damn kid wouldn't leave. I had to go and hold the food out," right? That's not happening, right? They're not telling stories. What's unique about us is that we're symbol users. We make symbols, and Burke says we misuse symbols because we use symbols in a way also to harm people, right? I don't ever see, well, that I know of, I guess, maybe I don't speak hippo, right? But I don't ever see hippopotamuses like fat shaming other hippos, right? But humans, we got that down pat. Humans are also the inventor of the negative. So to begin with, being inventor of the negative, there is not a negative in nature, right? Point to me a not tree, right? But when you're describing something, you say, well, it's not a big tree. So you're talking about the things that it's not, the things that don't exist, right? That's a very human thing to do. That's something that only humans can do, that we do through our language. But Burke says that we are also moralized by the negative. So many of our moral systems come from the negative. And Burke says that if you look at what he calls the Decalogue, which are the 10 Commandments of both the the Jewish and Christian holy book, the 10 Commandments, there's a lot of thou shalt nots, but he says even those that say thou shalt, as in thou shalt honor thy mother and father, he says that's just a long way to say thou shalt not disrespect thy mother and father. Right? But so we are moralized by the negative. The things that we should not be are often where we get our moral systems. And so I'll share with you, and maybe you had this experience too, that when I was growing up, my parents never told me who to be like. They never said to me, why can't you be more like this person or that person? But they sure told me who not to be like. I was not to be like, uh, sorry here, some of my cousins, right? That's who I was not to be like. And so we get a lot of those messages. I don't want you being like one of those kids. I don't want you being like one of those kids, right? I'm pointing to the left and to the right. You can't see it, of course, right? But that's so much what the negative is about shaming us for the possibility of being something. Burke goes on to say that man is also separated from his natural condition by instruments of his own making. So hold on with me about this one. It's an interesting story. So Burke talks about the day that, or the evening really, that he and his wife were taking a walk along a country road, and he lived out in a farm up in Andover, New Jersey. He said, we were taking a walk along a country road, and all we had was the light of the moon and the stars. And of course, those of us who've ever been out away from the cities know that the light of the moon and the stars can be powerful and wonderful and magical, right? But enough to light our path. And he said at that same time, all along the East Coast, there was a great blackout. They had lost electricity, and there was great panic and fear because they had no electric light. He said, here we were, walking along, we felt just fine, right, not having electric light. But those people up in the city, right, without electric light, they sort of lost their minds, right? So we're separate from our natural condition, which is to say being animals. Right? By nature, we are animals, by instruments of our own making. And as humans, we often want to forget that we're animals. We spend a lot of money to make sure that our bodies don't smell. It's part of the U.S. culture, is odor and scent control as well. But making sure our bodies don't produce the smells that our animal bodies naturally produce. We spend a lot of money trying to make the hair on our bodies, the natural animal hair on our bodies, look just right and just so. We spend a lot of time and money, or some of us do, or will one day, trying to convince others that we're not actually aging the way natural human bodies do. So we've done a lot of these things to suggest that we're not really animals, we're not really like that, we're not these creatures of nature, we are something supernatural. Burke also says we're goaded by the spirit of hierarchy, or moved by the sense of order, right? So the spirit of hierarchy is knowing who is better than whom. And we all want to be at the top. We all want to know that we have better. I find that students, when I'll return exams, sometimes want to know, well, what was the class average? And I don't tell class averages because, the question is, did you get the grade or the score that you wanted? Right? I think some people are hoping to know that they are above the class average. They can feel better about themselves. And of course, when you find out, as I did in school, I was lower than the class average, I felt worse about myself. Because we're all goaded by the spirit of hierarchy, the spirit to compete and to be the best. Right? We want to be the best. Burke also says we're moved by the sense of order, everything nicely arranged and organized. And that's why so many things have rankings. I'm always impressed by these talent shows, America's Got Talent and X Factor and whatever else, that you end up with a lot of really talented people, but we need to find out, yes, but who of them is the most talented? Like, that's a question we really need to know. Who of you is really the best singer? You're both good singers, but there can only be one best. Yeah, but is that important? And there's also some cases of American Idol, right, where the runner-up in American Idol actually had a better career than perhaps the winner of American Idol. So again, motivated by the spirit of hierarchy, knowing who is number one. We have this natural competitive spirit in us, or at least we do in U.S. culture. And it's not altogether healthy. And we are rotten with perfection. And by the way, that's a rhetorician's idea of a joke, right? Something is rotten with perfection. It's so perfect, it's rotten. They're opposites of each other. You got to really want to see it. Anyway, so Burke says we are rotten with perfection, that we want everything to be perfect. We want absolute zero. There's a movie with Sandra Bullock and I want to say Sylvester Stallone, and I can't remember the name of it. It's many years in the future, and one of the jokes of the movie is that the car crashes. And when the car crashes, the entire car fills up with styrofoam. right? It's the idea that, we used to just have seatbelts. Of course, we didn't even have seatbelts. We have seatbelts, and then we got, forward-facing airbags, and then we got curtain airbags, and now there's airbags that come out around your legs, and these are all good things, right? But the idea that for us as humans, it's never quite good enough. We always know we can do better, right? These are different notions, by the way, hierarchy and perfection. So hierarchy is we want to beat other people. Please note that. Hierarchy is about being better than others. Perfection is just that. This is for ourselves. We want everything to be absolutely perfect. Not a single weed in the lawn. And by the way, weeds in the lawn, in fact, are healthy. But that's a whole other story. And for Burke, a violation of any of these things, being something that we shouldn't be, being too animal, not being the best, not being perfect, all of these create guilt. And this is at the center of so much advertising, is playing on our sense of guilt, of our own failings. So what is guilt? Well, Burke says that guilt is things are not as they should be. We feel bad because we don't keep the house as clean as we know we should keep it. We feel bad because we're bad about ourselves, because our hair doesn't look quite the way we think it should be, because our car is not as nice as other people's, right? You're hearing this theme here, right? About my house is messy and it shouldn't be messy, right? That my hair, right, has gone it's too animal, right? My hair is going wild. That my car is not as nice as other people's car, right? So that's what guilt is. There are things not as they should be. And Burke says it creates a sense of disorder. That's just another way of saying things are not as they should be, right? It's disorder. And so again, it comes from a violation of a principle. So we're not being something. We're not number one. We're being too animal or too wild. All these sorts of things I'm talking about, right? So how do you get rid of it? Well, Burke says you make a sacrifice. This is from the old Judeo-Christian tradition. You make a sacrifice. That's the word he uses. You make a sacrifice. And he says there's 3 forms of sacrifice you can make. One is mortification, and that's yourself. So you're going to sacrifice something of yourself, give up something of yours. It might be your money, it might be your time. You give up something of yourself to make this thing better. I feel bad. I don't spend enough time with my children. I should be, and I'm not. I feel bad about this. I'm not being the perfect father. So what do? I spend the money to take them on a special trip, right? I make that sacrifice of time and money. I make that sacrifice of mortification, right, to do that. Scapegoating is we find a way to blame somebody else. It's really not me. The problem isn't me. It's the other people. So you see this a lot in political campaigns more than in product campaigns. The idea of we have problems in this country because of this person or those people. Those people who won't do this or who want to do this thing, they're the ones who are making our community less good, less safe, less perfect. Or another thing we might do, instead of an actual sacrifice, really is we just reject the standard. So it's not even really a sacrifice, but a response to getting rid of the guilt, as opposed to a straight up sacrifice, is we just say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to get rid of the guilt. I'm going to get rid of the source of the guilt. I'm going to say it's unreasonable to expect me to have that body, to have that life, to afford that car. It's just not reasonable or respectful. Or I mean respectful. It's just not reasonable. Right? So I'm going to reject the standard. Right? Most often in advertising, there is a link created between the product and having less guilt. Right? In most advertising. Now, if you're talking about a social movement campaign, it may be that you need to make a sacrifice of yourself of time and money and mortification to feel less bad about the fact that you have things that other people don't have, that your community isn't perfect, that there is a problem in some way, right? So, but anyway, still often there in product advertising, there is some sort of link between the product and having less guilt. And on D2L, I have a series of commercials. Some of them are more recent, some are a little bit older, but they're good. I think they really work well. They're fine examples. They're not that old. Some of them are Super Bowl commercials even. And in them, I show you the commercial and then I explain to you how we see principles of Burke at work in these commercials.